Well, it's fun to drive a totally stock car just to see what it feels like. And it's actually nicely balanced, and for its day, it's had more than enough power. Let's probably put it and see what it goes. There we go.
Yeah.
Oh!
It's not slow, it just isn't fast.
No, it goes all right.
It's kind of medium.
Welcome to another episode of Jay Leno's Garage. The vehicle we're featuring today, 1977 Ford Bronco. Although it's not technically original and restored, it's just been repainted and the seats have been redone. But other than that, it's as it would have been in 1977. The reason we're featuring this is because these just got beat to death and abused, and they were used as farm vehicles. So to see one this nice is really interesting. This one belongs to a friend of ours named Dave Kunz. You might know him from, if you live in LA, ABC. He's a reporter, he's an automotive guy, big enthusiast, always at Pebble Beach, always at the car shows. And this is his baby. Let's bring him in. Dave, how you doing?
Good, Jay. Good to be here.
Yeah, cool. Now tell us how did this come to be?
Well, you know, Ford had the Mustang in '65.
Right.
And this was kind of a follow-up to the Mustang. This was, they called it a sports car for off-road. They wanted to compete with the International Scout, the Jeep CJ5. And Ford was able to use parts they already had, like F100 four-wheel drive parts. And there's even a lot of Mustang parts on these, and started selling these in the late summer of 1965.
Now, would this have competed against the Volkswagen Thing? Was that out about the same
Well, that
time?
was later.
That
this
was a
was
little
more
later?
for, you know, they marketed these to hunters,
Right.
fishermen, ranchers, as you mentioned, farmers. Sportsmen, exactly.
Yeah.
The, you know, the great outdoors. This was post-World War II, baby boom, and get out of the outdoors and have a four-wheel drive. And some of the early commercials for these are hysterical because they show these things getting airborne, and then they show them with horses and a cowboy in it waving his hat like a bucking Bronco. They marketed them kind of real niche. What happened later was people wanted to drive them around, and they made them a little nicer as they went along each model year. And this is the last model year, 77. Amazingly, they built them pretty much the same way for 12 years.
Well, it's fascinating because you mentioned Mustang, but these are Mustang door handles, right? 65?
Mustang door handles, Mustang key locks. The early ones had 65 Mustang seats, then they went to 68 Mustang seats, which they were still putting in these in 1977.
Right.
When this was stock, it had Ford Galaxy wheel covers on it. They were still putting those on in 1977. Yeah. It was a parts-bin vehicle for sure.
So they just used whatever they had, because I recognize all the pieces. You know, that's all from the 60s, the whole gear selector quadrant and all of that. And the engine is, first it was 289, now this is what, 302?
Yeah, well, the first 6 months you couldn't even get a V8. It was a really weak 6 out of the Falcon. It was 170 cubic inches, 105 horsepower. They knew they had to put a V8 in, so they added a V8 late in the model year in 66. 289 up through 68, and then 1969 302. And by the end, that was all you could get because the 6 was too dirty to get certified for emissions.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, 75 through 77 was V8 only.
Oh, okay. And it was 3 on the column, right?
3 on the tree. In fact, they didn't even offer an automatic till 73. They finally had to compete with the Blazer and offer some amenities. So they said, okay, we'll build them with power steering. We'll offer an automatic transmission. It didn't even get power brakes, power disc brakes till 76.
And what did it cost back in 66?
There were 3 basic versions of the Bronco initially. There was the station wagon, which is what this was, and this ran all through. Then there was the pickup truck, a little tiny cab and a little tiny bed, and the enthusiasts called that a half cab. Then there was a Roadster. It had no doors, and it had a folding convertible top.
I remember that one.
Yeah, those are the rarest ones. They only made those from 66 through 68, and they're pretty sought after today.
And they didn't even have seatbelts when they came out, did they?
No, I mean, they had seatbelts, and then even when cars had to have shoulder belts, these didn't have shoulder belts. They just had lap belts.
But why was that? Was that because it was considered an off-road vehicle?
I think they got exemptions for that sort of thing. And also remember, a lot of these were used on ranches and farms, and who was going to wear a seatbelt? You know, that was, I think a heater was optional, a passenger seat was optional. You know, these could be a real work vehicle.
Yeah, but people love them, right? You got this from a guy who collected them?
Yeah, there was an older gentleman. His name was George Wright, and he lived in Grand Junction, Colorado. He'd retired there, and he was called the Bronco Man. And he collected and restored these. Apparently, he had a barn full of parts, and all of them have a luggage rack. That was a dealer accessory, and so there's a picture I have of him with his Broncos. And he passed away, and I was able to call at the right time. I called his son when he was selling off the collection, and I was able to buy this one.
Oh, okay. How many did he have?
At the end, he had 4, but I think he'd been ill for a while, so we sold them off. But his 4 favorites, and this was one that the family said this was his favorite one because he used it. He towed it behind his motorhome. He towed his fishing boat with it. He took it hunting. He really actually used the thing.
And how many miles did it have on it when you got it?
Just over 120,000, so
Okay.
it had been kind of used sparingly. And this was one of the last ones built. It was built in June of 1977, right before they switched over to building the big 78 ones. Interestingly, they sold 20,000 of these in 76. They sold 30,000 in 77. I think dealers ordered them knowing they were going to go away.
Yeah, I mean, people just seem to love them just because they're so simple, isn't it? It's really the Ford's version of what the CJ Jeep kind of.
Yeah, it's very basic, a lot of
Yeah.
metal inside and very few options. For example, the only audio option was an AM radio, didn't even have push buttons, it was a manual tune radio. You know,
yeah.
these were bare bones. That's part of the appeal today. Anybody can work on them. Parts availability is great. You can get anything, including a complete new body. So they're very simple. I think there's a lot of appeal for them.
And this one has a roll cage. So he must have put that in.
Yeah, that was added in. That's a roll bar, kind of a common option, especially if you're going to go off-road, because they didn't have a lot of crush strength to the roof, so it's considered a safety thing. So
Yeah.
a lot of those were added along the lines, but what this does not have, does not have cut rear fenders. This is what they call an uncut.
Okay.
The actual swept wheel
Yes,
arch like
okay.
the F100 pickups had at the time. A lot of people cut them to put big tires on them. So I really wanted to find an uncut one.
And this one has just road tires on it.
Yeah, these are kind
Automobile
of like
tires,
mud and
not-
snow. I drive
Right.
it mostly on the road, but I did find period slot mags, because a lot of people put those on back in the day. They were very popular in the 70s. and it catches people's attention because it looks like the 1970s.
It's amazing how simple it is. I mean, and like you say, it's got air conditioning?
This one has air conditioning. They were never factory air, but it was added at the dealership. This was a fully loaded one. This had every option that Ford had on it, and a dealer sold it in August of 1977 in Chino Hills. So I imagine air conditioning was probably something that they just figured they'd put in.
And what is that speedometer from? That looks...
That's from a 1965, I believe, F100 pickup truck. So it's the
Okay.
speedometer, and then all the other gauges are around
Right.
the outside of it.
Oh, you got the fancy radio.
I got the fancy, I have the modern amenities, but I still have crank windows.
Right.
Because, you know, that's what they all had. You got to give the door a good slam because they're kind of airtight, so give it a good shove if you want to. Yeah.
There you go. That's
metal.
It's a manly car. Let's open the hood. Let's see.
Sure.
I imagine there's all kinds of room under this hood. Isn't
Well, there is, especially when you see a 6-cylinder one, because that little Falcon inline
Yeah.
6, they had plenty of room. Now, a little more squeezed because this one's got, they had to add, look at the strange power brake booster. They had to
Yeah,
go off on an angle.
that's odd, isn't
yeah,
it?
that's the way they came. This one has power steering, it has air conditioning. It's a California one, so it has a smog pump.
Wow, you still kept the smog pump on there.
Well, I have to. It's a 77.
Oh, that's
so I
right.
have to get it smog checked every
That's
other
right,
year.
the smog,
The
yeah.
77 is considered the best year because they finally got them really right, and the disc brakes, and they had the big heavy-duty 9-inch rear end. It had the big Dana 44 front. But in California, you still have to smog it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So, the 49 state cars did not have the smog pump.
I don't believe they did, and it's a Thermactor system. It's hooked up and injects air in, and then of course they had to
Right.
put the air conditioning compressor over here, so you can see there's a little creative routing of hoses around there.
Yeah.
The guy did a good job of keeping it really fairly stock too.
Yeah,
But little things like these were put in by Ford to keep water out of the headlight wiring because they knew these things were going to be going off road and
Right.
being out in the wilderness. The jack is mounted under the hood, for your
Oh, I
jacking
got you.
needs,
Yeah, yeah.
bolted down like that. So pretty utilitarian.
And what's the horsepower on this?
Well, this has a whopping 133 horsepower, as in smog trim. The lowest was actually 76. They were down to 125 horsepower. But it's fairly torquey, and for just driving around, it's fine. It's a 92-inch wheelbase on a 4-wheel drive vehicle. I don't find that I need that much
Could
more
you
power.
still get a manual 3 in the tree in
Yes,
77?
yes, you
or
could.
was
The
it
automatic
just
was an option. You could get a 3 on the tree.
Okay.
You could even get it without a dash pad. I mean, if you didn't want to order up all the fancy stuff, you could just keep these fairly bare bones.
Yeah. I imagine, yeah. I mean, and you got your...
I added that for a little quietness and
Gotcha.
try to make it a little more roadworthy and pleasant to be in.
Right. No, yeah. No, it's disc brakes just in front, right?
Disc brakes in front, and which actually didn't come around until 1976.
Yeah.
So, but they had pretty good sized drum brakes. 1966, starting then, it was F100 pickup truck parts, so they were pretty good sized brakes.
Right,
but
right.
discs, the Blazer had disc brakes starting in, I think, 70 as an option. So disc brakes. I added the lights. These are very period because Bill Stropp would sell these through their catalog. They were
Right.
a
I
big
know
popular
that name.
Bronco.
Sure,
Yeah,
sure.
Bill Stropp. So
And this, was this
that's the way they came.
with a big chrome
Well,
bumper?
chrome was optional. If you didn't spend the extra money, they were white painted,
Oh,
and so
right,
was the
okay.
grill. It was,
So
no
you want
frills.
to, dress it up a little.
Exactly.
And this almost looks like it would open, but it doesn't.
Well, in the early years, they did. Look,
They
there's
did?
still a piano hinge here, and so you could take the roof off, and if you knew what you were doing, you could actually get the windshield to fold. The early ones actually had a little peg here for it to rest
right.
on.
Yeah, I think I remember that.
So you
But
wanted
they
to
did
get
away with that by
the-
77.
Well, by 1972, they were only building them really kind of the one way.
Yeah.
And they say that the windshield doesn't fold down, but I know guys who figured out how to make them fold down.
Yeah, because that seems like it would be a lot of fun to make.
Yeah, out on the beach or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's so primitive. I mean, you realize from 1977, cars have changed more from 2000 to now than they have up to 2000, I guess I could say. And this just looks like this could have been built in the 30s or 40s, basically. I mean, there's nothing sophisticated about it. It's all proven technology. Engine in front, transmission in the middle, boom, you know, just, yeah, it's just all steel.
Oh yeah, it's metal. And what's amazing is that they kept building these with the same body panels so many years. That's just back when Detroit, you know, everything changed. Even the pickup trucks changed every 5 or 6 years. This thing, they just kept stamping them out and stamping them out.
And why was that? Why did they not try to modernize it or update it? Because they were very popular, weren't they?
Well, they were, and see, in 1970, Chevrolet came out with the Blazer,
Right.
and which was built on a Chevy truck chassis. So they could offer things like power steering and air conditioning, and they would be more comfortable. Ford had to compete, so they just sort of added trim to it. They were
Right.
supposed to supposedly redesign it in '74, but then there was a recession, and they were dealing with OPEC and emissions and everything else.
Right.
So it got delayed, and they just kept building them and kept building them and kept building them.
Okay. See what now it's as it's full-time four-wheel drive.
Well, it has a transfer case, so there's
Yeah.
a neutral. You got to lock the hubs manually. Old
Okay.
school. There's no throwing a switch and you know, activating the slip control. It's just, you know.
Oh, you mean so you can make these non-drive wheels?
Yes,
Right,
they're unlocked right now.
You can
so when
unlock
you
them.
go off-
Okay, so that's so it's can be optional two-wheel drive.
Yes,
if you
so
want.
it's
Yeah.
two-wheel drive most
Sure.
of the time. You lock the hubs, you back up a little
Right.
bit, and then they engage, and then you
Right.
engage 4 low or 4 high for
Gotcha.
off-roading.
Okay, okay. I remember even the Lamborghini LM02, remember that big Lamborghini?
Oh, sure,
You always
yeah.
had to get out and unlock them. And then when
right.
when the self-locking hubs, we could do it, when you could do it from the dash, it was like unbelievable.
Well, can you imagine also if you lived in a snowy climate, and a lot of these were used as snow plows back in
Right.
the Northeast, and so having to get out in a blizzard and lock or unlock the hubs, you know, that probably was no fun.
Is it really different driving it full-time four-wheel drive on the highway, or are you better off always unlocking the
You
hubs?
know, I just figure drive it as a car, two-wheel drive,
Right,
rear wheels, you know,
right.
keep the front spinning, it wears everything out a little bit less
Right.
loss, and then, you know, keep the transfer case in good shape, so when you do need to use it, then you just
Gotcha,
engage it.
gotcha, okay. And of course you got the optional radio here.
Yeah, the radio, the AM radio, I upgraded a little bit.
Now we have two filler tanks here. Tell me about this.
Well, standard, there was the rear tank is the standard tank. This
Right.
is the main one, and then this was an optional auxiliary tank, which about half of them seem to have come with. And there was a switch underneath the seat to throw it to turn the valve.
Okay.
Problem is they started leaking like crazy, so
Right.
a lot of people replaced them. But it gave you extra capacity for going off-road and that sort of thing.
How many gallon is this extra one?
You got 14 in the back and you got 8 in the auxiliary. So you got
okay.
22 gallons, and they've always been about that many. When emissions came along, they reduced the capacity for evaporative equipment.
Right.
But you know, it has a decent range, especially if you're going to take this thing out of the wilderness. You want to make sure you can get back.
Right. Oh, and you got the optional tire cover here. That's pretty fancy.
See, this is part of the Ranger package.
Oh, okay.
Ford used the name Ranger for trim levels on their pickup trucks and on the Bronco, so it had fancier things like you've got a tire cover. And actually, the tire carrier was optional. If you didn't get that, it was stuck inside, taking
okay.
away some of your cargo space.
Yeah, I like this. It's different from the Mustang. It's a Bronco. I've never seen a Bronco with a tail like that.
Well, I'm not sure how accurate their art department was.
Yeah.
This is a reproduction. The original kind of fell
okay.
apart. But Ranger was as high as you could go with the trim level. So it got you the tire carrier, the tire cover, carpeting, which the base one didn't have, the houndstooth seats.
Yeah.
You got some extra trim on the outside.
Yeah.
And just a little fancier and a little nicer.
And the trailer hitch?
That's actually an accessory that was sold by
Okay.
Bill Strop. And it was included on the Strop Baja Broncos. I thought a fitting period accessory.
Now, are you in the Bronco club? Is there a whole...
Online, there's websites. There's classicbroncos.com, and then of course I have other Fords, so a lot of the Ford stuff, you know, interchange. I can buy the same oil filter for all my cars, so that works out great.
Well, you know what's funny? It's just like you mentioned the guy, you got it from, what was his name?
George Wright,
He was the Bronco
Bronco
guy.
Man. That was his. That was
Well,
his
I
name.
had, you know, a couple of weeks ago, we had John Cashman, the Lincoln Man.
Yeah, exactly.
All he knows, he can tell you he can recite part numbers, and it's just so guys live for the vehicles. It just makes me laugh.
And it's a little more than I get into it, but it's like, okay, which was the first one ever? Who has the lowest VIN? Okay, who has the highest VIN? And,
Yeah,
you know,
that's my favorite one, because when you think you know something about a car, then you meet a guy who has just memorized the parts book. Just every part number or they know?
Well, the other problem with these is, as they were kind of winding on the assembly, they were using parts, so I have a weird kind of parking brake pedal, and this one guy said, never seen one of those before, and he goes, when was it built? And I said, well, June. He goes, oh yeah, they were probably just finding parts wherever they could to stick on these things because they weren't going to make them anymore.
Yeah, I mean, that's what's fascinating. When you look at it, you can see all the different, like the Mustang door handles.
The tail lights are F100 tail lights. You know?
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
So there's a lot of familiarity. I think, where have I seen that before? Well, you might have seen it on another Ford product.
Because I remember for a while that you could buy these for nothing.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, Craig Ferguson gave me one. He saw it, he gave it to me as a joke. It was a junker. But I said, that's not a joke, that's a valuable car, I'm gonna fix it up. He said, he thought he gave it to me. Oh, I know, I'll tell him to give him a car, I'll give him this crappy Bronco. I go, no, I love my Bronco. We're gonna put a Coyote motor in it.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it'll be good.
Well, what happened to a lot of these, like a lot of cars, they rusted. The ones that didn't rust are the survivors, and that's what makes them so rare now.
Now, is there two schools of thought? You got the resto mod, the modified guys, versus the 100% original guy.
Yeah, there's about 10 schools of thought with Broncos. Some guys want to modify them to death. Some guys want to take them out and actually use them on the trails and do the real crawling stuff. Some guys want them bone stock down to bias bike tires. I'm kind of in the middle. This is what you call a day two. So it's the way someone would have accessorized back in the day. But I really wanted an uncut because I just like the style of those uncut fender wells.
Now, does your wife get this car?
She does. She loves it and rides in it and drives it. And anytime I can give her the keys, you know, she wants to drive it. We've taken it on trips. We've gone on vacation with it. It's a great all-around vehicle.
How far do you drive when you go on vacation?
We've taken it to Pismo Beach. We've taken it out to Palm Springs. It's actually not so bad on the highway. I've got it insulated fairly well, and it rides pretty good. I don't have it heavily modified. It's not lifted.
Now, do you get people flying you down trying to buy it all the time?
All the time. In fact, when we first got this thing back in '05, got it in the summertime. We were driving out to see some friends on the 101 freeway. It was like, you know, Saturday early evening, and I'm, you know, driving because I hadn't had it very long, and I'm not really paying attention. And my wife says, everybody is staring at this thing. And of course, I get to drive a lot of cool cars, and I have other classics, but this one gets looked at more than anything else.
And it's such a period color, too. It just looks like the 70s.
It does.
You know, there's something about it.
I think I had some pants this color when I was in junior high school.
Really?
I'm not sure.
Really, yeah. You should get them and drive around and just stand by the car and see what kind of...
Guess who owns this car?
Yeah. Well, it's pretty cool. Can we take it for a ride?
Absolutely.
I would love to take it for a ride.
All right, let's go. You get behind the wheel.
I will do that. Little fan belt screech.
Good old 1970s Ford fan belt squeal.
I remember this shift quadrant from every Fairlane Ford Falcon.
That's right. Yep.
They sit nice and high.
Yeah.
This is living. It is funny when you drive something like this because it's like a window in time, you know. And when you get one that's nice like this one, you realize, oh, these old cars are pretty good. Because a lot of times you get an old car, especially if you only paid a few bucks for it. Boy, these are crappy. Why did anybody buy one of these? But then when you get one that's, you know, in nice shape like this is, you go, oh, this is really quite enjoyable.
Yeah, it's a pleasant vehicle. And, you know, about 2 hours, 3 hours, it's fine. I wouldn't want to drive it across the country, but...
You know what I love? I love thin doors. I get in modern cars, and they're so big on the outside because the door is this wide for all the doors, and you're so cramped inside. Whereas this, you know, I'm amazed at, like, I've got a 68 Mercedes 6.3, and the door is so thin. It just makes me laugh.
Oh, there we are. You know, there's the outside. Also, if you notice, this has flat glass all around, so you do see some weird reflections once in a while.
Yeah. When you mentioned that the padded dash was optional, I thought by '77, I guess because this is not, it's considered a recreational vehicle or something, you don't have to have the padded dash?
Yeah, they got a lot of exemptions for things. Like, for example, we don't have shoulder belts, and cars had to have those starting in '69.
Right.
Lap belts, metal dash, you know, it's a different kind of vehicle, I think.
Right.
They got away with a lot when they were still, I think they just maybe kept getting extensions or exemptions. We're working on a new one. For the time being, just let us slide this through. Nobody's buying them. They're going to use them on farms.
We got to get Ford to bring back the Bronco name.
Well, they're talking about it. They've talked about it for years, and they've actually kind of confirmed they'll be doing it. I think there's a lot of demand. I don't think it'll be quite like this, though.
Well, it'll probably be whatever the modern version of this is. You want to keep it economical and low cost and all that kind of stuff. So.
But I don't think it'll be a manual transfer case, you know, manual transmission.
No, of course not. Of course not. But I mean, the fun thing about all these kind of cars is everything's intuitive. You know, I mean, modern cars, just to change the time, you have to get the manual, hold foot on the brake, and you touch the vent window. Oh, why does that have to, you know, there's no reason why it's that way.
Yeah.
Whereas with these old things, everything is pretty much self-explanatory.
There is one strange thing though for these, and you can run across this on the forums. There's a little thing on the heater knob, and it says pull for heat. Well, people just turn the knob and turn on the blower.
Right.
But you got to pull it to open a valve to
Right,
let the
right.
water into the heater core. So there'll be some guy on the Bronco. Hey, I just bought a Bronco and I can't get my heater to work. What's the trouble? They said, did you pull for heat? Oh, you got to pull the knob out. Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
So do you have the original manuals and
I
everything?
do. I have
came
the
with it?
owner's manual.
Yeah.
I have the warranty card from the first owner.
Wow.
A guy named Lewis Thompson from Montclair.
Okay.
I tried to track him down, but no one that lived in the house now spoke English, so I think that was kind of the dead end. I have the brochure from 1977 with
Yeah.
all the pictures of people out, you know, driving around and going hunting and fishing, enjoying the outdoors.
But it's nice with the power steering and the power brake. It's
Yeah, I think if you're actually going to drive one, that's when you want a later one because they
Right.
have more of the amenities. The
Right.
early ones, they had manual drum brakes and a 3 on the tree, and a lot of people though have converted them. You know, very few of those are still stock.
Did you want a 3 on the tree, or did you want the?
I was going to be okay with it because
Yeah.
it's a great anti-theft device. I mean, you know,
Yeah,
if you
no.
want somebody to steal your car, have a 3 on the tree.
Right.
But no, when this one came along, I was like, okay, automatic, that's great.
So the appeal is that you had a model of it when you were a kid, right?
Yeah, I think it was a plastic toy or maybe a metal one, you know, one maybe that size, like a 1/18 scale. And I just always thought they were cool, and I noticed them everywhere. And I always admired them from afar. And
Yeah.
you probably notice this too, when you don't really think about a car, and then when you have one, you start seeing them everywhere.
Right,
You know,
right,
so
yeah.
once I got one, oh, they're all over Southern California.
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
very popular here. But yeah, I just kind of had it in the back of my head that I wanted one.
So was it this, or a Corvette, or a Mustang, or what?
Well, I have 2 Mustangs, so
Okay.
I already got that taken care of. And then my wife, we were at a big Ford show one year, and I said, oh, I want to go look at the Broncos. I want to go look at the Broncos. We were walking around, my wife said, you know, we don't really have a car like this.
Yeah.
You know, and I was like, you're right, we don't. You know,
Well,
yeah, we should get one.
That's commendable that your wife would go to a Ford show with
Well,
you. Yeah, look at how that works out.
Yes.
But like you said, I like all the parts bin stuff because I remember we had one of the very first Mustangs here at the garage. Serial number like 3 or something.
Okay.
And inside it was all Falcon.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, all Falcon knobs and buttons and
Yep.
you know.
There's a lot of Falcon in the early Mustang, and that was Lee Iacocca's genius. You know, let's make a Falcon look kind of fancy and
Right, right.
spruce it up. And I think that's why the Falcon Sprint got discontinued because it was competing with the Mustang.
Right, I love the Falcon Sprint, the
Yeah.
63.5. I've got one of those. That was one of my favorites because you were ahead of the curve. You had the Mustang before the Mustang even came out.
That's right.
You know? And I remember they won the rally in Monte Carlo rally. In fact, they called the cross brace the Monte Carlo bar.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And all that kind of stuff. So I thought that it's just amazing how advertising and photographs have such an influence on you.
Well, my 65 Mustang, my uncle was the original owner.
Right.
And he was the first guy I knew that ever kind of souped up a car. He put dual glass pack mufflers on it, mag wheels, and
Right.
it was a 4-speed. And he'd lay rubber in front of our house.
Right.
And I thought that was the fastest car in the world. You know,
Was
and
that a
press
4-speed or an automatic?
4-speed, yeah.
Wow, he had the 4-speed.
4-speed, disc brakes, handling package, and I now own that car. That 65 Mustang.
Wow.
He finally sold it to me after years and years of
Is
begging.
he still alive?
Yeah, he is. He's 95. I take it down to San Diego once in a while,
Wow.
take it for a ride in it. And, yeah, he was a gearhead going way back, and he spec'd the car out the way he wanted it. And I said, why didn't you get the K-Code engine, the High Performance 289? He goes, it was $400. I had a 90-day warranty. We didn't have a lot of money, so he got the A-Code, the next one down.
Yeah. And it really was funny because back in those days, American cars were king.
Oh, yeah.
You get a Mercedes, but it had 6-cylinder. Why did you get a Cadillac with a V8? You know,
That's right.
They didn't make any sense. You know, it seemed like the smart way to go. Why buy a Mercedes if you can get an Imperial or a Cadillac or a Lincoln? You know?
That's right. Oh, I remember when my father used to get company cars. He worked for U.S. Borax, and the guys either you were a Chevy guy or you were a Ford guy.
Right, right.
So he always got an Impala, and his Ford guys always got a Galaxy 500. They'd sit around debating, you know. I said, you got them all for free. What does it matter? It's pride of driving it.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I can remember when I was a kid, GM had like 60% of the market, and the government was talking about breaking them up because they were too much of a monopoly.
And if you think about the neighborhoods, you know, it was mostly, you know, GM. Okay, there's a Ford, maybe Chrysler, but there were no imported cars. Maybe someone had a Beetle. That was about it. Even here in California, we had some friends that bought a Toyota Corona. You know, and they were like, "You bought a foreign car?"
Yeah, that's my dad. You can't get parts for those foreign jobs. It's a foreign job. Every car was a foreign job for my old man. Yeah. And my uncle Tony, who was 20 years younger than my dad, he was the youngest of the family, and he was like an artist, you know, and he bought a Renault Dauphine. And my father just, the kind of car is that for a man to drive? It's not a man's automobile. Look like a toy. I mean, and it had a country horn, meep, meep, and a city horn, meep, meep, and it had two horns. And you know, my uncle Tony, my father just couldn't understand why anybody would buy this little tiny foreign thing.
And that was back when we called them Renaults.
Yeah, Renaults, yeah.
Yeah, Renault.
Yeah, I mean, the world was a different place when this car was built. You realize anybody over the age of 75 or 80 was born in the 1800s.
And when you talked about pre-war, you had to identify which war.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. In 1977, that was about when the American auto industry went into that downslide of poorly built cars.
Well, and remember, they were having to downsize everything because OPEC came along, the gas prices. So GM did the big downsized cars, and then Ford still had the big ones, and they downsized them. And in '77, the Caprice was about the same size as the Malibu because they hadn't downsized that one yet. So everything was going smaller, smaller, smaller. The Bronco, the other way around, was going bigger for '78 because they had trucks, it didn't matter.
And this steering wheel looks like a Grant steering wheel, but you say it's not, right?
No, it's a company. It's apparently a guy who used to work for Grant, and he decided that he wanted to build one with a better quality. And it's called a GT Performance wheel, and this is actually for a Mustang.
Oh, okay.
It's got these little fake horn buttons, but I thought it just kind of fit the spirit of a '70s kind of vehicle. The stock wheel would be about a foot closer to your chest and about 20 inches in diameter.
Because there was no power steering.
Well, originally, and then when they added it, it was still an option, so they had to offer this huge wheel.
So were there any other names for this besides Bronco, or was Bronco the original name they went with? Have you done your homework there?
Yeah, I think they wanted to keep in the theme of, adventurous and animals, like they had Mustangs, so Bronco kind of fit.
Right.
And if you've seen some of these early TV commercials, it's hysterical because there's a guy in a Bronco Roadster with no seatbelt hitting the thing airborne, and they have a bucking Bronco with a guy riding it in the commercial. So there's this guy flying along, so I think Bronco kind of fit.
And this is the original color, correct?
Yes, it's called medium copper.
Right.
With the tan Ranger interior. They actually had a lot of wild colors. Some are very rare. They actually made them in black, which is very rare.
Yeah.
They all had a white roof, and that was to keep the sun from heating it up too much. But in the last 2 years, there was a thing called the Special Decor Package, and it was available on 3 colors, and you got a body-colored roof and a stripe down the side.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, you've been doing your homework, and you're going to be known as the Bronco guy.
Well, the original Bronco man was George Wright. I don't want to take over that. There's some people that are way more into these than I am. I just like to read up about cars that I own.
Well, maybe they'll bring the name back. Who knows?
I think that's the plan. Ford kind of plays it close to the vest, but it was leaked out because I guess they have to file things with the UAW and they're going to start building something.
Oh, right.
And there was a UAW memo saying, we're going to build a new Bronco and Ranger at the blah, blah, blah plant, and that got leaked out. So they haven't officially announced what it's going to look like. They did a concept in '04, and then the nice thing is all the chassis pieces are essentially Ford F100 four-wheel drive. So they're overbuilt for this thing. So the brakes are really good. The springs are really
Look
good.
at that baby climb hills. Look at that.
Yeah. And of course, Ford brought back the Bronco, or brought out the Bronco 2 around 1982, because they realized there were people who still wanted a smaller one, and the big one was maybe too big.
Now, do you go to club meetings and stuff, or no?
I haven't done much of that. I just kind of like to go to things and maybe show off for a little bit. And get out. I'm over the spending the whole day in the folding chair answering questions. Not that it isn't enjoyable, and I like when people admire the car, but.
I like it when they have the husband and wife of the matching Mustang outfits.
Exactly.
That's take it. Yes.
And they have the Bronco chairs, and they have the Bronco jackets. Yeah. So do you own a Bronco? It was hard to tell.
Kind of live the Bronco lifestyle.
And it's the same for guys with Chevys, and they put the bow tie trailer hitch and the bow tie battery hold down bolts, and the bow tie valve covers.
So what do these run usually? They seem to be going up, starting to move up a little bit.
Yeah, they've really gone up in value. Some of the nicest ones, the very rare Strop Bajas, have hit $100,000.
Wow.
Believe it or not. that's probably more of an anomaly. I think for a really nice, decent quality Bronco, you're probably talking 30,000 and then up.
Yeah, yeah.
Who would have thunk? I mean, this thing was $8,000 brand new, you know, probably out the door.
Was it that much in 77?
Well, as much as I've been able to tell, because with all the factory options, it would have been about $7,700, and then
Yeah.
the dealer added the air conditioner, so I figured that was $300 or $400.
Yeah.
So probably right around 8,000. And I have no idea, were they discounting them at the end, or did they know what they have, and they said, no, you don't want that new one, you want this small one. Of course, when the new one comes out, then they say, you didn't want that small one, you want the new big one.
Right. And I love the complete absence of any safety features of any kind. No door guard. Yeah, well, you got but the roll bar didn't come with that.
No, it didn't come with it. No, these were pretty Spartan, as they say.
Yeah. Steps over the bumps fine.
Yeah, it's not super smooth, but you know, I like to just go out of full blast because I figure that's what it was made for.
Yeah.
One of my favorite LA moments was I was on Sunset Boulevard about 15 years ago, going through the Sunset Strip, and the traffic was kind of backing up, and I couldn't figure out why. And I was behind a series of SUVs. There was like a Range Rover, and there was a Suburban, and there was like an Explorer, and they were all tiptoeing because they were building one of those crosswalks with the sunken-in bricks.
Oh,
and it was about that far. So all these women were going about 3 miles an hour. So you got a four-wheel drive.
Yeah,
Just
it's
go
funny.
through.
It's funny. Well, it's fun to drive a totally stock car just to see what it feels like, and it's actually nicely balanced, and for its day, it's had more than enough power.
And whenever they did comparison tests with this and the Blazer and the other one, they said, well, the Bronco might not be as nice on the road, but it does the best off-road.
Right,
as climbing and the wheelbase and everything else. So it was still getting props, even with bias-ply street tires on it. In 1974, they would do a comparison, say, yeah, the Bronco can climb anything. You know.
Now, you're looking to get any other Broncos, the Roadster version or any of that stuff?
I think I'll stick with one. I mean, I'd love to have a Strop Baja, but I should have bought one of those when they were more affordable. Those have gone crazy. The other thing I was thinking about doing is if I could find another one, make it into a Strop lookalike, but be real honest about it.
Right,
There's a guy up in Northern California, Andrew Norton, he has BajaBronco.com, and he reproduces all the parts you need. So you could do a nice tribute one and just be real upfront with it.
Yeah.
This is not the real deal.
Well, Dave, thanks for bringing this by. We really enjoyed it. It's really fun because everything is so heavily modified now. It's fun to drive one to see what it was like back in the day.
And that's the way I tried to make it, like the 70s.
Yeah, and this is what you got for your $3,000. And a pretty good value, I'd say.
Yep, especially if you hung on to it.
Yeah, there you go. Very cool.
Mm-hmm.